Scott says, on a podcast, well, this barely qualifies. Would you please talk about why Memphis seemed to be the only promotion that had the, quote, on a pole, unquote, matches? My favorite was the coal miner's glove on a pole match. I also never saw a coal miner's glove match in any other area. Please share the other variations of these with others on your podcast. I was always excited to see whoever got the glove and got to use it in the match. It made for some great suspense. Well, yes, it did. And
everyone did it. And
everybody did it. And the of course, now it's become a joke with the, fucking Russo, the Viagra on a pole and, all that stuff. But I won't say all the territories, but many of the territories did these matches. It's just that Memphis is synonymous with a lot of these stipulation matches in a lot of people's minds because Memphis as a territory lasted 10 years longer than the rest of them. So there's more video, more people saw it. It was the last remaining real territory, except for Smoky Mountain. And well, they outlasted us too. So, but in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s, the first coal miner's glove match I ever saw, and obviously it was in the Tennessee territory, but it was, around 73 or 74. They had them in a variety of places all over the South because, once again, I have heard tell that there was, once upon a time, like with every other wrestling angle or stipulation, there is some type of glove that coal miners wear so they don't fucking break all their knuckles and fingers and everything, right?
That was the part that always got me. I never understood. Like, it was never explained to me why a coal miner's glove was special. You just did more to explain it to me than any wrestling show I ever watched growing up.
Well, but see, that's the thing, because they explained it when I was a kid too. The guys doing the promos explained it. One of the first coal miner's glove promos I ever saw was that I'm going to take that glove, that glove that those coal miners wear, so that they don't break their knuckles and bust up their hands with all them pickaxes and hammers. I'm going to take that glove. It's got metal all across the knuckles, and I'm going to put it on my hand, and I'm going to knock you out, whoever. And when I hit you, you're going to go down from one shot, and it's going to bring blood. I guarantee you, I'm going to open your face up with one punch with this thing. If I can get my hands on it, you're fucking done, whoever you are. That's the promo, right? And it generally, a coal miner's glove match was booked because in the previous event, the previous match between these two individuals, one of them somehow either got brass knucks out of their tights or a chain wrapped around their fist or a roll of quarters, or they did something where they knocked the baby face out with an object, with a punch. And the promo would then be, obvious, everybody has to know that there's no way that so-and-so could have knocked me out with one punch. He had to have something in his hand, even if the referee didn't see it. Well, this time, we're both going to have an equal chance to knock each other out with one punch. We're both going to have an equal chance to bust each other's head open like he busted mine open with whatever he hit me with last week, because we're going to take that coal miner's glove with the metal all across the knuckles, and we're going to put it on top of the pole in the corner of the ring. And whoever climbs the pole and can get the glove can use it any way he wants. That's the rule of a coal miner's glove match. Whoever, you have your match in the ring. But if you can escape your opponent and his ministrations long enough to climb that 10-foot or 15-foot pole or whatever in the corner of the ring and get that glove, when you come down, you can use it. It's legal. It's immediately brought into play in the match now. And Mid-South, my God, the coal miner's glove matches with Duggan and oh God, who was it he had the program with Cole? Was it Darso? And then they had him again with DiBiase.
DiBiase in 85.
Well,
yeah.
But I mean, they had more than, but that was and then of course, the match is exciting because you're building the drama to try to get there, and you almost get there and the other guy pulls you down, and you're having your match working around trying to climb the pole and get the glove. But then finally, when the glove is gotten, there's a number of finishes you can do, but one shot, one punch with the glove is it. That's it. Because it not only wouldn't be believable if you punch a guy over and over with a glove loaded with lead, But if you did that, then it killed the goddamn, the promos that one punch is all it's going to take me when I get that glove. That's why getting the glove is so important. And then just because sometimes the heel would get the glove first, but he would try to use it, but he'd swing and the babyface would duck and the babyface would grab him and give him an atomic drop, and the heel would fly into the ropes and come back off at the babyface, and he'd swing at the babyface again, but the babyface would duck again. It was like the guy had a loaded hand grenade in his hand, and whenever this landed, it was going to be all she wrote for the fucking babyface. And you could build that way. And then finally, maybe the heel would get backdropped, and the babyface would then snatch the glove himself. Oh my God. But and they had that match in a variety of places, generally in the South and the Midwest and the Southeast or Southwest, where they liked more violent, realistic, bloody wrestling. You can see this happening in Amarillo before you can see it happening in Madison Square Garden. Because it's just, that's the audience you're going for. But yes, it was in a variety of territories, just many of them died out before people got a chance to see what they were. But it's old as the hills. And then there was variations. The belt on a pole. Why is there a belt on a pole? Well, because in the finish between Brian and Jim last week, Jim, the babyface, was really giving Brian fucking what for and almost had him. But then the fucking referee got knocked down, and that no good fucking heel, goddamn Brian, got the referee's belt out of his pants and fucking whipped the shit out of Jim, and now Jim's wanting to get even. So we're going to take that leather strap. It's 3 or 4 feet long, and we're going to put it on the top of that pole, and whoever climbs the pole and gets the strap can whip the fuck out of the motherfucker they're mad at. And it builds the drama. And it gives you someplace to go for a pop and a payoff and etc. The Battle Royals. When the Battle Royals got stale after the 60s, except in Los Angeles and San Francisco, that's why they came up with in the early 70s, the 2-ring Battle Royal, where, there was a Battle Royal going on in 2 rings side by side. And they'd change the rules. Sometimes the winner of Ring 1 would face the winner of Ring 2 in a singles match to determine who won the whole thing. Sometimes everybody would start in Ring 1, and they'd be thrown over into Ring 2 to be eliminated from 1, and then thrown out to the floor to be eliminated there, and the last guy in 1 and 2 would fight. But in some cases, they jazzed the Battle Royal up by saying, hey, we only got room for a budget for 1 ring. So we're going to put the $10,000 that the Battle Royal winner is going to get, we're going to put that check on a pole in the corner of the ring. And imagine how crazy it is when you got 18 guys fighting each other, but also trying to fight and climb that pole to get the fucking check, because the first guy that gets the check wins. You don't have to eliminate everybody. It's a twist. And of course, generally, the check would not be gotten until there was only 2 or 3 guys left, and then you do your angle. And I remember the biggest problem with those matches was back in those days, literally the pole was, you would get one of those metal poles that was about 6 inches around, metal tubes or whatever the fuck. It was metal, and whatever the fuck it was used for. It was about 15 feet tall, maybe 20, and you would lean it up against the ring post. Because, see, to be farther than a person standing on the top turnbuckle would be able to reach up, the pole off the floor had to be at least 15 feet tall. So usually it's a 20-foot pole. And they would lean it up against the ring post and then take rolls of duct tape and just tape around and around and around. And that was the goddamn safety apparatus. And in the 2-man coal miners matches, it'd be fine. But in the Battle Royal, you got 8 guys hanging on that pole. It'd go sideways and come in there, or they'd knock the check down, whatever the fuck. One time, Joe LeDuc and Handsome Jimmy Valiant were going to have a strap match with the strap on the pole in the Louisville Gardens, and they put the pole up without neglecting to put the strap on it. Well, it's the main event. And that pole is 20 feet fucking off the ground, so if you're standing on the top turnbuckle, it's still 2 feet easily above where you can reach, right? Paul Morton is the referee. He's 5'3" and 60 years old at the time. You can't have one of the boys put the fucking strap up. So they get me in the ring. I'm trying to climb this pole with one hand and put this fucking strap on the top of this loop, right? And all of a sudden I hear this voice, and bear in mind, I'm a photographer. It's 1978. I'm 16 years old. I'm still not really all the way smart. I hear this voice behind me. Get on my shoulders. It's fucking LeDuc. I'm like, I'm in front of 4,000 people in the Louisville Gardens, and Joe LeDuc, the Canadian lumberjack who has just recently sliced his own arm open, taking a blood oath on television with a lumberjack axe, is saying, stand on my shoulders. Oh, yes, sir. And I got on his, and he just stood straight up on his tippy toes with me on, and I got it up there. But that's, once again, it's like everything else. When it becomes commonplace, people feel the need. Well, everybody knows. Like Bill Watts gave a memo out to the talent one time in Mid-South. Gentlemen, I know that everyone, in quotation marks, knows who you are and that you're stars, and everyone, in quotation marks, knows the rules of all the matches. But in your promos, if you're in a street fight, come dressed like you're in a street fight with the fucking cowboy boots and the goddamn, a buckle, big belt buckles and everything. If you're in a taped fist match, do the promos with your fist taped, illustrate it, explain it to people. How do I win this match? Why did I want this type of match with these rules? Sell it to people. Who am I that I can fucking win a taped fist match that I've asked for and I couldn't win this match last week? Whatever the case. That's the way you sell tickets and get interest, and that's the way you get matches over. And then you don't do them all the time. You don't repeat this shit constantly. But even before the modern day, the comedy writers and the Russos and the bullshit of the world came around, the guys got to the point where they thought, well, everybody knows who I am. I don't have to explain shit. Or everybody knows the rules of this. The people know. I used to hear that a million times. People know. But the guys who were really on their game, like the bookers, like the Wattses, would make sure the fans knew every time you advertised that match, what are the rules? Why was it asked for? Why you don't have a guy whose gimmick is he's a ballet dancer ask for a coal miner's glove match. A coal miner's glove match might be if the guy had been a coal miner, was from that part of the country, if he'd been a boxer before, or like I said before, if there was a knockout with a gimmick in the previous match or whatever. It's like Wahoo McDaniel. His specialty was the Indian strap match because you watched on TV. In all the Westerns in the 50s and 60s, you saw the Indians would have the fight with the cowboy hero where they'd be strapped together left wrist to left wrist, and they'd have a knife in the right hand, right? Well, they didn't have the knife in the wrestling match, but it was an Indian strap match. Wahoo McDaniel's specialty wasn't a coal miner's glove match because he wasn't a coal miner. But all these things, and slowly, even back in the territory days, they would forget to start explaining. And so like you a coal miner's glove match. I have no fucking idea. Why is that? And that's why, once again, idiots like Russo who are afraid of things like knowledge and learning and reading would never bother to examine, well, where did this come from? How should it be done right? Why do I have questions? Why does it sound hokey? Can we do it the right way? No, he just makes it even more hokey and do it all the time because it's goofy. People laugh about it. That's not why it drew money originally. All these things that are wrestling, what do they call them? Tropes, the tired old wrestling cliches or routines, tired old cliches or routines of anything. They started as a perfectly reasonable thing to do that drew money and sold tickets and created interest and was legitimately credible. And then the Dusty finish that was the Eddie Graham finish that was a remarkable finish that led to incredible repeat business the first time it was ever seen because it was something that couldn't happen in a million years, except it did. Holy shit. But about the fifth or sixth time that people saw it happen in 5 years instead of a million, it wore off. When things are prostituted, overdone, not explained, made trivialized, then they just gradually, and then the people in the business feed on that and just continue to do shit just everybody knows. That's where we lose these things. And you have things that can increase drama, different stipulations, different kind of matches that haven't been seen, that can keep the cards fresh, especially in the days of the weekly territories. Or you have shit that people burn through, trivialize, make meaningless, do with underneath talent instead of main event guys, do too much of, and prostitute it to the point where it doesn't mean anything. That's the difference. And it's not just a coal miner's glove match or anything else. It's anything, almost everything that was done in professional wrestling, at least before 1980, was thought of or concocted or inspired by something that legitimately happened or legitimately could happen, or there was a legitimate reason for. But then, and once again, also when they travel from territory to territory, some guy like Onita, he got stuck in a Tupelo concession stand brawl. He had no idea why. He didn't know what those crazy American fucks were doing in Tennessee, but he remembered it when he wanted to create hardcore wrestling. When a guy came into a territory, a world champion, he's just there for a week. He sees this certain stipulation match, and then he goes on to another territory, and he mentions to the booker, yeah, I just saw this crazy fucking match they had out in Portland. Holy shit. You should have seen this thing. It was a first blood match, and they had to fucking, wipe the opponent's head with a handkerchief and soak it completely in the opponent's blood before he could win the match, which was a legitimate match they did one time. And so that booker will put his own twist on it and use it there in his territory. That's the way shit happened. But once again, without national television, without the same group of people seeing every program from a specific promotion every week across the country, you could repeat this. You could do these things. You could do them with different opponents, or you could do the same opponents could travel the country doing this thing in a number of different places. And guys kept their specialty matches sacred. Nobody was going to beat Wahoo McDaniel in an Indian strap match. And also, if Wahoo McDaniel was in a territory, nobody else was going to have one. Nobody was going to make it look bad, or they'd have to fuck with Wahoo. Whoever had the matches, whether, Jerry Lawler had the great pile driver, and a pile driver was illegal in Tennessee because that way it gave the heels another way to get heat. When you pile drived a guy back then, it was the next thing to killing him. It was even illegal in the bylaws of the Tennessee Athletic Commission that a pile driver was illegal. And it was illegal because of the promoters who got them to declare it illegal so that they could work angles off of it. So they would have a pile driver match. When Lawler was a heel and had pile driven the babyface, they'd come back. The only way to win is by using a pile driver on your opponent. Shit, somebody's going to get hurt. But if they'd have done 4 of them and both guys had lived, that match would have never drawn again. And now people, a pile driver match, only way to win's with a pile driver. Who gives a shit? Because everybody's gotten up and kicked out of them and flipped. Now they do double flips off the top rope into pile drivers. But at the time, the promoter specifically in those areas where the pile driver was an illegal hold kept the pile driver from being used except in certain occasions and only by main event guys, so that when they did that match or did an angle with it, it meant something. It's education, and it's explanation, and then it's follow through. And that's what the territories had that today's wrestling can't replicate for whatever reason, because they can't just stop and figure out, okay, we're going to tell people who our wrestlers are, where they come from, why they're mad at each other, and what their strong points are. And then we're going to come up with different rules for matches to put them in either positions of jeopardy or give them a chance to get even at something that's been done to them. That's what wrestling is. It ain't that fucking hard. Or you can just gimmick up a gimmick and a gimmick, and you can throw them in a cage where they're allowed to fucking take all the furniture in the cage they want to, but the cage is electrified and there's a fucking mice that have been infected with rabies running around on the floor. So if you get outside the cage, you got to fight the mice or else you'll get rabies. And then nobody wants that explained to them because it's so fucking stupid.
I was at a Halloween Havoc 1992 in Philadelphia, and they had Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal. Jake Roberts versus Sting. And you would spin the wheel, and whatever stipulation came up, that would be the match. And you would see some of the things on the wheel, and it's like, oh my God. Barbed wire match. You never saw that in WCW. That was a big deal. Explosion match, or whatever it was. Like, you know, by that point, if you got the wrestling magazines, you had seen something that Onita was doing. You had seen some kind of explosion in a wrestling match, and the ring is wet. You didn't know what was going on. You had seen something. It was reasonable. Falls Count Anywhere match. You had seen that. What won was Coal Miner's glove match. And it was so awful. So in Philadelphia, this town that likes their bloody wrestling matches, they're teased with all of these stipulations, and they get Coal Miner's glove match. And it was
wait a minute. Why would there's Coal Miner's glove match is guaranteed blood? Somebody's got to bleed after they get hit with the fucking Coal Miner's glove.
I don't remember if Jake bled, because he ended up losing because his snake turned on him and bit him in the face.
Oh, God.
Causing Sting to be able to roll him up. And
when your snake turns on you, you know you've made some bad life choices. Well, yeah, but here's the thing, and what you said, they had all those names of matches on the dial, right? The wheel. But they didn't on television explain any of them. You had to, you said, well, yeah, as a fan, I've seen the thing where Onita, the ring blows up or something. It was the same thing as all the people on Twitter going, well, if you'd have done research, Cornette, on all these wrestlers before that you watched the show, I'm surprised that only about half of the population jumped in to say, you dumb fucks. Why is the burden of proof on me? Why is the burden on me? Well, I'm going to pay $50 for this brand new wrestling promotions pay-per-view, but I better spend a couple hours boning up on who everybody is and what their background is because they're not going to tell me on the show. What the fuck? Right? People write, well, you should do some research. No. When you go to be entertained, you don't need to have Elton John stop and say a 30-minute dissertation on, well, I'll explain to you what this song meant when Bernie and I wrote it. It's incomprehensible, some of these fucking people. No, if you've got a product that you are trying to sell to people, and they, on the surface of it, on the face of it, can look at it and go, what the fuck? I do not understand. You got some splaining to do. And just as we've just illustrated with the stipulations of matches that used to mean something and used to sell tickets because they used to be understood and adhered to, one must adhere to the stipulations. I found out that out the hard way when I thought they'd not want to see Ricky Morton's head shaved in Johnson City, and they'd rather see Candido's. But nobody bothers. They just think, okay, I'm dressed up like a goddamn three-headed Martian, and I'm in a match called a, ultimate surrender match, but I'm not going to tell anybody the rules or why I'm in it or how I got this way.
You're out of touch, Cornette.
I'm out of touch. So there you go. The Coal Miner's glove match, baby.